Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. So this video is to show you what I've been working on, and basically what I'm trying to attempt here is creating a status panel for short circuits around the layout. What I've done that's different on the layout is that I've added a lot more short circuit protection, and these are basically the districts that I've been splitting the layout into. It might grow from here, but for right now, what I have is basically the D&H line, which is kind of like the main part of the layout. I have the CSX main line, which is the secondary railroad within the layout. And then I have the yards. This yard is less used, so I combined it with the spurs because there's very little traffic there. The helix, I decided to make one for that because sometimes I've had trouble in there with power and just if there's a derailment and it gets stuck in the helix, it's hard for me to tell. And then the third level, I wanted to make its own thing. It's kind of like the upper staging, and it's also the return loop, so that's easy to identify up there. And then the biggest thing is the lower staging. That's where I get most of the traffic. Or the heaviest load. And the reason why I did that is because I have three boosters and I tried to separate them so that the booster is not overloaded. So my command station, which has its own booster in it, is basically giving power to these to the D&H, the Whitehall yards and spur, and the helix. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to overload that one. And I figure, the D&H, even though it's a long section of track, it doesn't have a ton of locomotives on it. The Whitehall, like I said, it's rare that I have a locomotive at all on there. So all you get is cars with resistors in there. And the spurs, same thing. And it's very few of them. So I figured that's not a lot of heavy load on the command station. And then on the DB220, which is two boosters, the first part of the booster is controlling the CSX mainline and Selkirk, which, Selkirk is basically going to take most of the load of the booster, but the CSX mainline can either, be busy at some points if there's a lot of traffic waiting to get into Selkirk, or not. It could be completely dead. So that's why I combined these two. But I have plenty of juice on one booster to connect that amount of track with that amount of load on it. And then the second part of the booster is going to control, or it's going to give power to the third level and the lower staging, which, like I said, the lower staging gets most of the load. Third level is only 3 tracks up there, 3 holding tracks, that is. And then it's a very short line around the basement, so it's like pretty much a single main line with one siding. So I figured that would be the other booster there. So anyways, that's the point is that what I'm using for the power distribution or the districts, right after the boosters, I'm using the PSX short circuit boards or protection boards, which are, from what I understand, a fairly new product. The PSX was always around, and a lot of people love the PSX, but this is apparently supposed to be faster, better. You can do more things with it, and so I'm brand new I came from PM42s from Digitrax, and I only had one, but it wasn't even working that well because the relays were a little clunky and a little slow. So sometimes I was having problems with those. So I had bypassed those, and then I obviously read, and people told me that that's a big no-no, because you could damage the boosters or you could damage even the decoders on the locomotives that are sitting on the main line. So I went ahead and purchased the PSX boards, and so far I've only gotten 3. Right, so I need 7 total. I have more on back order. These things are flying out of stores. Everybody seems to be interested in them, so I just ordered the rest of them. and they should be here in about a week or two, which is kind of annoying because I kind of disconnected everything downstairs to be able to do this, and then I didn't realize it was going to be such a long waiting period of time to get them. So, anyways, back to what I'm doing here. So this is basically going to dictate, like for example, if there's a short on the lower staging, the PSX board is going to display a red LED on the actual board where it's located. But from that LED, there's a remote out, so you can hook it up to any LED around the layout. So what I did is I put in a red LED in here. And so whatever happens on the actual PSX board is going to happen here as well as far as illumination. So this will turn red if there is a short. If there is not a short, this will turn off, and there will be a green LED display just to show you that it's working, that it's on. And also the way it works is when there's a short circuit, the PSX board tries to rectify it every 2 seconds. So it'll be red, and then you'll see like a quick little green flash, and then it'll go back to red for 2 seconds, and then it'll keep doing that. So it'll bring the attention to that because of the back and forth that's happening. So imagine, this is where the short is, and all these are sitting just green. This will be flickering back and forth, and it'll be easy to detect. I was going to do bicolor LEDs, but I decided against it because I want to see that there's a different location for the short lights, and then obviously you can see that it's changing, over to the right when there's a short. So that's what I decided to go with. Now, let's get to the actual construction of this little panel that, it's not great. It's okay. So this is basically I went to the dollar store and I got a picture frame, the plastic cheap picture frame at the dollar store. That actually cost me $2.50. So I guess it's not the dollar store. And I just kind of took it apart. I took the backing off it, took the glass out. And I basically copied the size of the glass with plexiglass. So this is plexiglass here. I then went on, Microsoft Word or any word processor, and I created this list of names. I made the background black and printed it out. I mean, my printer's not great, so it looks kind of gray, and you can kind of see the lines and stuff. So I guess if you have a better printer, or if you use like photo paper, it might come out nicer, but it doesn't really matter. This is just for me to see what's going on. And then what I did is once I had everything cut the same size, I put it up against the plexiglass and marked it so that I knew where I wanted the holes to be drilled. And I kind of did like an XY thing where I marked, like when the plexiglass still had the protection film on it, I just took a marker and I took a straight edge and marked all right in the middle of the name. I went across, and then I went down with a straight edge twice, at equally spaced distance here, so that I can get a nice line throughout. And then, once I drilled the holes, then what I did is I took the film off, and this is what you end up with. Now, I made a stupid mistake. I started drilling, and then what happens is when you drill, there's plastic that kind of hangs over from the drill bit. And so what I did to clean it up is I took a slightly bigger drill bit and I kind of bored, I went just a little bit in reverse just to kind of knock off the extra plastic, and that was working. And then I got distracted. I had to go upstairs. When I came back, I still had the bigger drill bit, and I had not drilled this one yet. So I drilled it like an idiot, a little too big. So that's the only one that came out a little crappy. Obviously, I then switched over to the smaller ones and finished this off here. So that worked out. The other thing that I ran into is that the frame was supposed to be, I tried to buy a deep frame so that I can get all the wires behind it. But originally the frame is supposed to be facing this way. And this is supposed to be the back, right? Because you can get a picture in there and the backing without any problem. But I wanted the deeper part to be there. So I had to kind of flip it around, which then made this glass kind of they didn't have anywhere to stop, right? If I put the glass in this way, right, going this way, it's pushing up against this plastic here, and it doesn't allow it to come out of the frame. So the picture would be facing this way. But since I had to flip it around, what I had to do is add some kind of spacers or, you know, something in the corners here to hold it in place. So I just took some little plastic things that I had laying around. They're all the same. And I crazy glued them right here, here, there, and there. And then that now, you know, obviously this is not going to fall out anymore. I also, I forgot to tell you this part. Before I put the paper on, like behind the plexiglass, I took some spray adhesive and some pretty thin styrene. I forget what the size of it is or the thickness of it is, but took some styrene, I sprayed it down, and I put the piece of paper on this is white styrene here. And then once it's stuck, then I cut the plastic so that it would obviously match the size. And what that allowed me to do is create some kind of backing and also a way to sandwich that piece of paper between two hard surfaces. Because what happens is if you just put the paper here, it's going to start to wrinkle. It's going to start to, you know, fold. And if anything you do here, obviously is going to, you know, wreck it because there's no protection. So adding the styrene here allowed me to, you know, do things like this, like putting hot glue, you know, on the plastic and soldering without worrying about burning the paper and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's basically what it's going to look like. It's going to sit next to, like if this is my monitor downstairs, it's going to sit next to it like this. These are pretty much the same size. And that'll look nice. I did put resistors on the lights, which we're going to get to in a second, because they were very bright without the resistor. So I didn't want the light to be like piercing while people are trying to look at the monitor. So anyways, let's go to the wiring now. So basically what I did is I took each LED and just made them look neat, and, you know, I shaped them so that they wouldn't be touching each other or in the way of each other. Once I had the anode and the cathode, or whatever you call them, in place, I figured out which one was negative, which one was positive, and then I put the resistors in. I soldered these resistors in, you know, depending on which way it was. Now you're going to notice that some of them are one way, some of them are the other. That's because the way I glued the LED in there, it just ended up being that way. So that doesn't really matter as long as you know which one it is. So in my case, I made all the negatives the ones with the resistor on it, and so I know that the positives don't have resistors. Then I went ahead and wired. This is just Cat 5 wire that I use a lot. And what I like about Cat 5 wire is that you get a solid color and you get a striped color, but it's the same color, so you can have like a positive and negative, so to speak. And so what I decided to do is make all my positives solid, and then all my negatives striped. I also decided to make all my red lights, which are these here, orange, and then all my green lights green. It makes it easier visually to figure out which one's which. I also took some of the shrink tube stuff, and I tried to just create a buffer in case, you know, the wires come together for whatever reason, which I don't think they will. But I think what I'm going to do now that everything's wired is I'm just going to put a little blob of hot glue on each one of these, you know, making sure that they're not touching, obviously, just to hold them in place. And this way they're not going to go anywhere. Kind of like what I did here, but not as big. Now, speaking of this thing, so I've been working a lot with just RJ45s, which are basically Ethernet cables, because I find that you get a lot of bang for the buck here. Like, you know, an RJ45 is going to hold 8 wires in one shot or in one connection. So I wanted to design this thing in a way where if I needed access to it, right, if one of the lights go out and I need to replace it, I could just unplug it quickly and remove this thing. And so that's why I decided to buy these little things, which are like breakout boards for RJ45 wires. Now, originally I was gonna get like like 4 separate ones, but then I found this one that had it's like a set of 4, and the breakouts are in the back in 2 stacks. So you have your 8 A's, your 8 B's, C's, and D's. And that was perfect because that's basically all the wiring I needed, and I still have one more set left here, for the reds and for the greens, if I want to add one more. Going back to this product here. So the thing with this is that I wanted to do it so that it was removable, but I obviously needed 2 sets, because what I figure is that whatever configuration I come up with here, like for example, like this is the lower staging, red, that's going into terminal B1 and B2. I made sure that the odd numbers are the positives and the even numbers are the negatives. And then for the green light, it's A1 and A2. So when I go down to my PSX boards, I have to do the same thing. I have to find lower staging wires wherever they're coming from, and I have to plug them into the same terminal. So again, B1, B2, and A1, A2. The B would be the red, right? I made all my reds down here and all my greens up here. So B1, B2 would be red, positive, negative, and then A1, A2 would be my green, positive, negative, and so on and so forth. I would hook them up exactly like here. And then it doesn't matter because once you have this wired on the PSX side, and this is wired the same way, it's kind of like, if you can imagine, the wires just continuing, right? So it doesn't matter what these are wired to in relation to the Ethernet cables, because all that's doing is creating a bridge. So as long as the Ethernet cable is plugged into the same input or the same channel, basically. So you figure, if you're looking at it this way, this output, which is closer to the right side where the C's and D's are is going to have to feed the same one here. This way, it's just a clean connection. Obviously, if you're facing them, they're going to be completely backwards. So you have to make sure that, like this one is actually going to go to this one. This one's going to go to this one, and so on and so forth. So as long as I don't get that backwards, it should work as a bridge. So that'll be the next step to wire this up. And the reason why I haven't done it, well, first of all, I just got this today. Like it literally just came a few minutes ago. But the second reason is because I'm waiting for the other PSXX, I got to get used to saying that, boards, so that I can just wire them all up at the same time instead of like wiring it up and then going back and then having to add more. And then basically once that's wired up, I'm just going to create my own RJ45 wires instead of buying pre-made ones, because I have I have the heads, and I have I don't know what the tool's called, but the thing that clamps the head into the wires to create custom RJ45s. And then that's obviously going to feed through, like from my layout into the wall and out to where my display panels are. And then I'll figure out, the only thing I got to do is figure out a mounting plate or some kind of mounting brackets for this, so that I can just hang it kind of like I said, like that next to my monitor. And I'm trying to avoid making more holes in the wall, so I'm trying to mount it to the mounting plate for the monitor, which has got plenty of like holes and stuff back there to play around with. So that'll probably be what I do for that. So, the other thing I wanted to mention, which I forgot to tell you, is that this, when I put it in there, was sitting in a way that it was covering basically all the jacks, right? So imagine, like if it was sitting like this, it would be covering all the jacks. So I was going to cut the frame out, like over here, to allow for access, but then it would have weakened the frame so much that I think it would have fallen apart. So what I did instead is I made a little spacer. I created like a little angle, and now I have clearance. Either way, you're not going to see that because when this is mounted, those wires are going to be behind the monitor, right? Because it's going to be sitting nice and snug against that. So I'm not worried about wires being exposed or everywhere looking sloppy and whatever. So, all right, so that's basically it. Once I get all this wired up and I get a little power going through it, then I'll show you how the lights look and how everything's going to function. But I think it's a good move, and it's a good thing for my layout to make sure that I don't burn anything out or blow anything up. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.